Namaste. And here, this is part 3 of the trifecta, the Trinity. And today, this one is called the Sage. So to reiterate, we had the rogue in the sense of to go rogue, to do things in a different way than the generally accepted way. And that was my teacher. That's how I best classify his teachings and his philosophy in his life. And then I talked about Thich Nhat Hanh, TNH, as the epitome of the bhakti. First, I believed that my teacher was Kriya Yoga, about energy. And he seemed to be able to manipulate energy and control energy and focus on energy. And Thich Nhat THH was the Vietnamese monk that was the epitome of compassion. Now the sage, and I wore this shirt in honor of this. This shirt was tailored for me by a dear friend's mother, and it's the color that I chose. It's called sage green, and this is the third group that I wanted to talk about, the Jnana Yogi. I'm a Jnana Yogi. I achieved my enlightenment through discernment, as I have a previous gathering information, sorting information, ultimately storing information with the hopes of gleaming it from knowledge to take it the next to wisdom, so that you have somewhere to start. So you have a pile to start with that is knowledge, bona fide, qualified knowledge, and then you gleam it and you get the nuggets, and the nuggets are this third yogic path, jhana. So then, what I haven't touched on in my trilogy is the karma yogi, the yoga of selfless action. And I do know people, but the karma yogi and the bhakti yoga, the devotion and the selfless action, the motivations seem really similar. Both include the celebration of mantras and the celebration of gurus, our yogis, our teachers, the work around the ashram, seva. But karma yoga is more, bhakti yoga is celebratory, chanting and praising your guru, worshiping your guru. And karma yoga is through your actions. Somebody that has set up some foundation, or someone that has done the work behind the scenes. This for the common good. Really incredible, and I can't think of an example right now, but there's probably a myriad of examples. But I want to talk about this color and the significance, because sage, while it's a green, it has a gray in it. And gray, when they talk about gray matter, I may be stretching it here, but gray matter is the brain. It's a euphemism. It's something that we call, use your gray matter, the brain. Now, I don't know if the brain is physically gray. There must be some truth in it, because otherwise I don't know where it came, gray matter. From whence did it come? But this is the color of the sage green. And I'm wearing this in honor of this third part of the trifecta, or the trilogy. And that's the jhana yogi, or jhana yoga. The practice of jhana yoga is a yogi. The practice of karma yoga is a karma yogi. The practice of kriya or raja is a kriya yogi. So yoga is the practice, the practitioner is a yogi. And just wanted to wear this color in celebration. And my mala, handmade by my wife, by the way. Another kind of, within the scale, gray, the sage has quite a range. And this watch band is within the realm of the gray. I don't know if you can see that now. They're probably perfectly matched, and that's probably why I was so attracted to this watch, was that it was in the realm of my sage color. So, of all the practitioners that influenced me, Adyashanti is, in my estimation, a practice jhana yoga, discrimination, discernment. It's a legitimate, it's the use of the intellect instead of my idea that discarding the mind. I thought, why would you discard the mind? We're not given many tools. And the finest tool I had in my toolbox was my mind. I had a sharp mind, a good mind, a retentive mind, a useful mind. Of course, I also had the lower mind, the monkey mind. The monkey mind is kind of responsible for the egoic structure. The monkey mind is kind of responsible for the Maya or Mayic outlook on life, illusory, not understand, confusing illusion with reality. This is the realm of the magician, not musician, magician, isn't it? He's manipulating, but he's doing true illusion. And we're doing it to beyond illusion. Penetration, through rigorous intellectual process. And like every other process that will take you there becomes a time when the process was not the point. The process was what fit you, what you were drawn to. Over here, by the way, I've got some tiger eye and a green. I'm not familiar with my stones, and my turtle. I don't know if you can see him. I love my turtle, but he's made out of the same whatever this is. But all handmade by my wife. So I'm dressed in full regalia today to celebrate my path. And I was wondering, well, what would I be called? I never wanted to be a sifu. I have my sifu. I didn't want to be called a roshi because a roshi is the Zen practice. Rinpoche, likewise, is the Tibetan Buddhist. Master, but sage. That's what I strove to be, that's what I became. And one of the differences, I think, is a sage is more of a at least in my mind, more of a solitary figure, not likely to be too interested in the organization of the what I call the rogue. My teacher, the rogue Buddha, in that he was a micro. He controlled every single occurrence, and up to 150,000 people, probably at his apex. 150,000. I've seen him claim more, but 150,000 regular practitioners. Okay, active practitioners. Pretty amazing, pretty lofty. And the skills, the micromanagement, the skills. But not only was he a micromanager, but he was also a macro manager. He didn't get bogged down. He knew the details, but he never forgot the big picture. And this is truly what he was a master at, is building a hierarchy. Creating a lofty pinnacle for himself where he could be adored and worshipped and bowed down to and celebrated wherever he went. People would just go into ecstatic excitement. Sifu was here. When he came into the room, you could feel the energy, the kriya, the chi, as they call it in Chinese. Could really feel. Not very charismatic, okay? My rogue Buddha was charismatic. The Bhakti yogi that I talked about, Thich Nhat Hanh, TNH, of compassion, was no less charismatic. His followers obviously are worldwide. My teacher was essentially limited to Taiwan because of language. He didn't speak English. And it didn't make his message transferable too far beyond the Chinese-speaking world. And he just kept it in Taiwan. He went up to Japan for a little bit, but I think the success was not really, it didn't spread like wildfire. And I don't think because of his Taiwanese-ness that he was too interested in the China market. I understand that he got money from Hong Kong and he had donors, so he did have followers probably in mainland China, but he accumulated wealthy and powerful people surrounded by lawyers. Interestingly enough, many of his upper echelon teachers in the hierarchical structure were attorneys. A lot of intelligent doctors, intelligent people that subscribed, I guess is the better. He's the prescriber and they're the subscribers. They embraced his being. And very surprising, I think that being rogue, being structured on the hierarchical, as I mentioned, the very Leninist power structure, clear. But only way to be promoted from one level to another level is through the auspices of the man himself. Now his upper echelon, he started out with a very few beginners, but he had the wherewithal his practice, his energy, his skills, his ability, his knowledge, his power, energy, kriya, allowed him, and desire in the purest sense, that he wanted to, and it was benevolent desire, because he wanted to make this teaching available. It had always been, especially Kriya. Remember, Kriya is Raja, or the royal path. Kriya was probably the most zealously guarded, because there's room for misuse. When you start dealing with mastering power, compared to, say, like my Vietnamese monk, TNT, no, TNH, Thich Nhat Hanh. I try not to repeat that too many times because closed caption just doesn't get it. Let's try for fun. Thich Nhat Hanh. Let's see how this comes out when I look at the closed caption, which I'll have to work on. And then I saved the trilogy that I woke up with this morning. What's this? Finally, a way to classify my teacher. And I want to talk about rogue, because when I looked in the synonyms for rogue, they were all negative. But I didn't intend this to be negative. In fact, quite frankly, because of the hierarchy and maybe he learned, I'm only guessing, speculation, pure speculation, without supporting evidence, was that he learned from the criminal element in Taiwan how to pyramid, how to build this structure, this unassailable, indestructible, powerful pyramid, being the most powerful geometric shape, and clear cut, and rules. And I started off the beginning. I was always a rebel. I hate rules. I hated following the line what snake can follow, and people were guarded and prodded, and I used to go bah bah like a sheep. I felt like I was herded like a sheep, and I made it quite. My poor mom and dad, Taiwanese mom and dad, it just made life miserable for them, because I hated to be herded. I hated to participate. I hated rules with a passion. And fortunately for me, my teacher came to bat for me, and he says, you know what? Hai Young knows what he's doing. Hai Young is me. Hai Young knows what he's doing. He's my advice. This was what he would publicly admit to, that it was his most advanced student, and I could pretty much do what I wanted. They had rules like you can't have pets, you can't have open windows, you can't meditate around fans or cooling off, or and the Chinese has so many superstitions, and I think a lot of the rules were to kind of counteract. He's much more aware than I am of the especially less educated, the superstition. There's tremendous superstition, and he had to counteract that, so he had to review and kind of not allow, but strict adherence. His way or the highway. And there's some examples of when people started feeling their oats that he would either give them a knockdown, mostly private, but sometimes even public. And I think and he had a system, which I have to talk about now, because this was a system being beyond the language and beyond the rules and outside and on my own. and permitted leeway by the man himself that was given to no one else. I've always managed to live my life the way I want to live my life, and I've always been able to get my way. Passive resistance is I'm skilled at, but this is probably my gift, is that my individuality, as I say, coming from America versus the group think of Asian cultures, the individuated, the one being more important than the many instead of the many overwhelming the one. And I tell you, if it wouldn't have worked. If he had a group of me, we would probably be kicked out because we're just disruptive. But as it was, people just accepted, because he was so adamant about it. Anytime anybody would complain about Hai Young didn't do this or Hai Young did that, and he would just tell me, no uncertain terms, never mind. Leave him alone. Don't bother him. He can discriminate. He knows what to do. He doesn't need to be a sheep. Because ultimately he's not a sheep. He will become a Buddha. From the position, the 10th realm of Bodhisattva that he knew. But what he didn't know is that what would my skill be? What would my work be? And as a sage, I've understood now. I know my role. I've got one person, basically, and 3 or 4 potentials to become more in the mold. People that had experience, that understood the language, that went through his system, that they might be able to duplicate something close to what they might have. Followers, they might be able to spread the message. And I've had YouTube, but it's never been my goal, and it's not my fractal, it's not my karma, it's not my path to attract some. I'm not supposed to be on the pinnacle. I'd be overwhelmed by the details, number one. I'm great with details, but individuated, my details that I needed in my path, this selfish enlightenment that we all enlightenment can be looked at as selfish because it takes a focus on within, the answers within, to the point of exclusion of everyone and everything else outside of that. And then, I was cautioned and I learned that I needed to really work on my green. That's the sage color. But sage tinged with gray. I don't think this would be a TNH color. I'm not sure what their color was or if they had a color, but the robe was purple. The royalty, the royal purple. It had the tradition, the heritage. This was just attractive to me because, first of all, I was always a blue guy. Most of my aura was blue. Blue to violet to purple. But at a certain stage, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, green, sage. When I found my niche, when I found the word that I could live with, Lao Tzu, teacher, is 100% acceptable. But to go beyond teacher, to master the subject, was a sage, a solitary figure, who was only going to have direct influence on just 2, 3, 4 people max, with the hopes that one of them, Sifu, went big and had only me, as far as I know, had only me. I'm the only one. But that was after I left his auspices, after I was summarily dismissed, after he symbolically turned his back on me. He said, jump off the abyss, and symbolically turned and walked away, never looked back. So now it was my turn. And I just leapt into the gray abyss. And I've talked about that before, about post-leaping, what happened to me. But today I'm talking about 8 years post-awakening, and how I see myself, Sage Green, a sage. Thank you.